This particular conversation that we're about to have is going to frame a lot of the conversation that we've been having today, which is an overarching conversation about liberty, about having both intellectual and high-level conversation about gun violence, but also about having practical, interdisciplinary, at all levels conversations about gun violence. So I present to you all the president of St. John's College.
Well, thank you all for your immense fortitude and patience today. I'm going to be very brief, to be mindful of your time and not to strain your patience. I was simply asked by my good friend Gavin Buckley, since we were speaking at St. John's College, and St. John's College is a place that's a speaking college, a place based upon principles of free speech and discussion, just to talk a little bit about civil discourse. You'll be gratified to know that I was trying to knock it out of the ballpark for Gavin, and I wrote like a 30-minute long address he asked me to. I got it down to about 6 minutes. So if you'll give me 6 minutes, I will share with you some thoughts. So I want to express first deep gratitude for all of you for joining us here today for this very timely conversation. I want to thank those who have organized and convened the event, as well as the speakers, panelists, and all who have contributed to our dialogue. In fact, dialogue, true dialogue, is the only way we will be able to move forward on such a vexing issue as gun violence. And to engage one another openly, honestly, and frankly, we must recover in our society the capacity for civil discourse. Commentators from across the political spectrum decry the corrosion of conversation, the disintegration of dialogue, the barometric pressure of hostility that seems to rise ever more precipitously with each news cycle. We have lost, they declaim, the ability, even the will, to participate in civil discourse. They are not wrong to make such claims. We have become a society hobbled by antipathy. We huddle like troops in trenches, eyeing one another suspiciously across a heavily mined no man's land, knowing that to venture forth is to put oneself in peril. It seems better sometimes to keep one's head down. Civility is indeed radically important. We need to be civil so that in an immensely diverse society, we can live beside one another. But living beside one another is not the end of society. The end, the purpose of society is to flourish. A truce might allow us to live in proximity to one another. It will not allow us to thrive, however. In order to flourish, we must engage in truly civil discourse. We must, in fact, learn to argue. To discourse is to engage in conversation, to speak with one another. So to engage in civil discourse is to be part of a speaking city. What we have here today is a city speaking to and about itself, about one of the most heart-rending of issues. Yet we have not shied away from the task. If the model of our work today can be multiplied from city to engage that larger polis we call American civil society, we will elevate our discourse, and in so doing, find ways to meet and overcome our challenges. Civil discourse, however, is not polite conversation. It is the lifeblood of civil society. And like blood, if it is to sustain us, it must continue to flow, to circulate, and to remain warm. The ancient Greeks believed that to be human was to be imbued with logos, that is, We are each possessed of rationality. Logos is a complex term. It is used to mean both reason and language. The two allied, they are inseparable. In fact, logos is the Greek word for word. We thus think in and through language. Each of us experiences the world through the long soliloquy, unspooling in our minds. At this very moment, your present thoughts are shaped into words, which are in turn reflecting upon the words that I am sharing with you. When you have the opportunity to respond, to share with me what is on your mind, we will be engaging in dialogue, or in Greek, dialogos, meaning both to and through. Dialogue is the interchange of at least two people sharing their thoughts through speech. But in the exercise of dialogue, 1 plus 1 is much more than 2. Our exchange of ideas through speech builds value exponentially. We know more together than any of us ever could know as an individual. Each of us has a limited experience of the world. Each of us is gifted with only a tiny sliver of that which is true. Moreover, we are prone to error, to mistaking what we think or hope to be true for truth itself. To share our thoughts is to check our opinions. And we learn not simply from those we speak with, but from everyone that they have conversed with as well. Conversation, if it is attended by candor, creates a web of rationality that extends from person to person, generation to generation, linking organically the hard-earned wisdom of those who have come before us to those who currently alight upon this chaotic world. It is what shapes singular individuals into something we call society. Moreover, the wisdom of the city, in aggregate, is a manifestation of human potential. We ought not to get our hopes up too much, however. There's still plenty of room for error, plenty of need for continual correction. We might be possessed of rationality, but we are also human, and thus subject to other forces, other forms of irrationality. The Greek philosopher Plato once used a provocative image to explain the human condition. Imagine a chariot, he said, pulled by 2 winged horses, one white, one black, flying recklessly across the sky. The charioteer struggles to control the vessel. One of the steeds tries to pull it up towards the sun. The other tries to drag it down towards the ground. This, Plato says, is an image of the human soul. The charioteer represents our powers of reason, attempting to guide us safely and surely in the right direction. The light horse represents our desire for glory, for victory, the drive we have to elevate ourselves at the expense of others. The dark horse represents our baser instincts, our appetites, which are tethered to the material world. Allowing either horse to gain control would be disastrous, but it is indeed a struggle for the charioteer to rein in our passions. Society is that chariot writ large. If democracy is ruled by the people, society, the compilation of its citizens, is also subject to the same features. The impulse to follow reason, the drive for glory or victory, and the desire to fulfill our baser instincts. If we are to move ahead safely, reason must predominate. We must retain truth as our true north. To do so, we must continue to discuss the fundamental human questions in a reasoned and civilized manner. Our politics are transitory. They are too often driven by a desire for power, glory, or victory. To find a way to speak with one another, we must cultivate three simple virtues: intellectual humility, the recognition of the equal dignity of all members of society, and the passion for truth. Intellectual humility is the starting point of reasoned discourse. We are each on this planet for a brief time, making our way as best we can. Yet we are buffeted by fear, desire, will, circumstance. The knowledge that we pick up along the way comes to us in teaspoonfuls, in fragments. It is necessary to hold opinions to make our way through life, but we ought to hold them gingerly. As we try to come to seek the truth about things by speaking with others, it is imperative that we recognize that we are all fellow travelers. We are each equally dignified by our capacity for reason. Our dialogue must be attended by respect, patience, and fair-mindedness. From these will emerge trust, which will elevate our discourse. The passion for truth is in the end what must animate our project. Intellectual humility may nudge us away from ignorance, but truth must be our lodestar, that towards which we are drawn. In the pursuit of truth, we must be scrupulous, fearless, and persistent. In fact, in the gap between ignorance and knowledge, suspended between intellectual modesty and the hunger for truth, is where we will find the solutions to our problems. It is there as well where we converse with the better angels of our nature. If we, as a society, are going to flourish and prosper, we must ensure that reason remains ascendant. We must recommit to dialogue and conversation, not to be peaceable, but to be better, both as individuals and as a community. There is simply too much at stake to proceed in any other way. Thank you all very much.